So I guess first I should definitely say thank you to Dave for hosting, and thanks everyone for being so welcoming. And I have to give a special shout out to a dear friend of mine who made it today, Margot Berdyshevsky, who is a poetic soulmate of mine. I've known her these 20 or so years, actually a little bit more. And I met her when I lived in Paris. She's still there, so I daily color my jealousy with her pen. But anyway, so thanks, Margot, for stopping by. It just so happened that the time frame worked perfect for her. All right, I'll stop bantering. Uh, Before I get going, I did want to say a quick word, and then I'm just going to hopefully let the poetry speak for itself. But the poet Yehuda Amichai once declared in an interview with the Paris Review, and here I'm quoting: "I've often said that all poetry is political. This is because real poems deal with the human response to reality, and politics is part of reality. History in the making. Even if a poet writes about sitting in a glass house drinking tea, it reflects politics." End quote. And I couldn't agree more with that. Ours is, and indeed may have always been and will always be, a world of chaos. It is a world that renders loving difficult. It is a world that shoos us away from asking questions, from making connections. It frustrates progress and compassion. It drains our wonder and curiosity. It isolates us from marvel and from humanity. And so I hope that some of these words might be an antidote for that, because they're definitely an antidote to all of that for me. Um, and I'm going to try. I wasn't planning on sharing screen for everything today, but I've had a couple of people request it. So I'm going to try to do some share screen, and we'll see how it goes. Um, I'm going to start with the opening poem in the book. I will not chronicle my traumas, not the speed at which metal kissing metal, engine block into flowers, passenger seat, shattered glass and blood pedaling around the car, a broken nose and bruised spirit bursting from accordion mess, nor the flight vector of a 5-year-old from the door of a '78 model blue Chevy van, open like a hug just let go, to freeway concrete, arriving ambulance lights spinning faster than passing motorists, and the racing imagination of a newly minted sci-fi mind. Neither the stretch the pine trees made, skyward, autumn air cool on my bare back, their bark as rough as the high school boy up right behind me, my tears silent and prickly as pine cones. But the stroke brushed dabs of matters and cadmiums and emeralds, impressioning the Houses of Parliament, sunset, as the empire of light lords over tree-lined boulevards at night. Perhaps the way her hair cinnamons between my fingers, the way her skin silk clothes my earlobes, the way her whisper colonizes my very bones. Maybe instead a crowd-stuffed bus, selected for transit, its bumper-to-bumper independence and rush-hour liberation, the stretch of red lights winking and swaying, coaxing you to the horizon.
Good.
And this next one's called May I Have This Dance. The Apis mellifera, its waltz, one bzz three, one bzz three, cartographing the locus, where one might alight, petal of tulip or honeysuckle, to be nectared, pollen dusted, or simply say, charged and twirled into the field electric. You are here. Um, and I came last week and heard about the passing of John, and though I had crossed him in some of the online Zooms and stuff, I didn't know him as well as you guys. But I thought perhaps a tribute I had to a friend that passed away many years ago might also serve as a tribute to him, because poetry honoring poets is a good thing. This is called Midnight Plays Midnight in the Middle of the Cacophony of a Bar I Frequent. This is for Tommy, with a sample from A Tribe Called Quest. So it was late one night in a sports bar and restaurant. The kind where the TVs are shiny, black, and high def and numerous, hanging on walls like finished framed tableau in an artist's studio, displayed for the visiting curator who may or may not buy any of these finished pieces. But they're showing all the highlights of our modern day mass entertainments with the red and white team gunning past the blue and white striped lads playing the football you play with your feet, and another screen with the blue and red guys smashing the black and silver fellows while they battle for the football you handle with your hands. And on another screen, the orange ball is stuffed in a hoop, and on another, the stick hits the white ball, and you can almost hear on another screen the grunts and racket of shuffling ladies from one side of the clay court to the other. And there's no sound from any of these screens, the aforementioned sports bar opting to pump popular hits through the sound system. And I'm sitting there, flanked by friends, fringed by friends of those friends, and on the speakers I hear A Tribe Called Quest Midnight, and everything around me stops. And I'm suddenly whisked back over 20 years to that night in my car where the CD player kept playing track after track on that album, and our heads were nodding in unison and in sync. We both bust out with intensity. Most rappers don't see it, spirit-wise. Musically, you gotta be it. And I reached to turn down the volume, and we both look at each other to agree that even then we felt a crisis in hip hop coming on, and that our favorite MCs and DJs weren't getting the attention and accolades they deserved because lesser cats with weaker raps were easier to play on the radio. And thank goodness we could hit the track back button and hear Midnight again, or turn to Award Tour as an apt send off as we leave the parking lot behind the theater and turn north to take you home. And it's late in this sports bar, and I think how long you've been gone, and I try to remember our last conversation as I replay in my mind the montage sequence of how we lost touch after leaving junior college, and phone calls every couple of months changed to a couple of calls a year, and how we used to see each other every day and had lunch together often, and how we used to play the dozens between classes and before rehearsals, and never worrying for one second that your yo mama jokes or my yo mama jokes would cut to the quick. And I think now that subconsciously I carry on these quick quips with my sister and friends and coworkers in a nod to your absence, though no one ever has the comebacks you did, and some lack the good sense to remember it's all in jest. And just as midnight starts its second verse here in this sports bar with the blonde bombshell bartender, whose bright white smile reminds me of yours, I think about how great it'd be for you to be in the chair beside me, egging me on to flirt with said bartender, inflating the courage and ego in me the way my tall beer wouldn't. And I wonder if you'd be surprised at the introvert I've become, and my tendency to sit quietly and observe and be Q-Tip's nocturnal animal. And I think if you were here, we'd think about putting some poetry to a beat. And then I remember that time listening to Guru rap about it being mostly the voice, and you looking at me to say I had the voice, and laughing and pumping your fist before giving me a high five. And that night is on my mind. The night is on my mind. The sun will still shine. And I remember I'm stuck in this sports bar late on a Sunday night, and I'm 2 beers and 2 shots in, but no one knows I'm back in that god-forsaken East Texas city, pulling my own C-mail smooth, reminiscing over you because A Tribe Called Quest called you back from the past. And here I am in that sports bar thinking how Boys to Men told us how hard it would be, and how hard it is now to think that I never really told you. And despite all these TVs and the eye-catching blonde pouring another pint, the night makes the aura. The sports bar, the soundtrack, and outside the way the moon dangles in the midnight sky and the stars dance around. Yo, I think it's fly. And I think the memory has that intensity. And I nod my head, still in unison to yours, thinking you'll see it, knowing you'll see it. And then I slow down as the song fades into some current bubblegum pop. Uh, So that's from my friend Tommy. I want to skip ahead a little bit. Let's see if I can uh, work this table of contents thing. See if it helps out a little bit. That's not it. We're going to go to a poem. I write a lot about art. Um, and so this is something I wrote because I was quite taken by a painting by George O'Keeffe that was not a painting of flowers. So it's called Gazing on the East River from the Shelton Hotel. You may have been enchanted by the bright, bold colors of an orchid or oriental poppies, their oranges and red popping off canvas from across the room. I too admit the magnetism of a black iris, my own too long linger in a gallery corner. But these seductions are fleeting, and I quickly escape to the cityscapes of the great gray Gotham itself, its puffing smokestacks and ship-stocked rivers, its brighted nights and daylight displays, a street lamp here, a sun there, and to the horizon, a broad stretch of taillights and headlights away. Read nothing into this urban flight. I trade not my penchant for the yonic, for the horn honk echoes in the canyons of the phallic. Give me, though, the energy of tugboats, traffic, and rooftop magic, the clouded moon and radiant buildings, the romance, no, the intimacy of it all. And since we're in New York, I should probably have some New York poems in here. I'll have some train poems later to be sure. But this poem also becomes part of a series of what I call code switching poems because as a French speaker, I'm often thinking in both languages and imagining things happening as those languages speak to each other in my brain. And so this one, as you'll see, plays with the word canard, which in English, canard, we use the same word spelled the same way to mean very different things. So this is called cravings. Funny how from the French we take canard à l'orange, roast it, confidently into duck à l'orange. But the canard, well, we sing that in a bit of a false note, for which the French too use canard, given that for us it is a rumor, a false story, a ruse, a red herring, as it were, though herrings and ducks are quite different aquatic beings. And the French too use canard similarly, for their canard enchaîné is a satirical rag, because un canard slangs newspaper. But from there, the American dries up as a duck dipping out of the pond and into a sunbeam, where, as if on a walk in Central Park, I might point out the sunning avian with a "Voilà un petit canard," and turn to you, mon petit canard, my sweet, taking your hand in mine to wander along the lake line, eyeing our path. And as we stroll together, this little duck, sun-dried and happy, starts to follow us, a little limp in his step, and you, the concern in your voice as vibrant as your eyes, cry out, "Oh no, the poor duck's lame." And of course, this lame duck is not how we usually think of a lame duck, which the French call un canard boiteux, which doesn't sound much like English, but boiteux, boiteux, boiteux might suggest the thump of a heavy foot on wooden floor. And as we stroll farther along, adding distance between us and the addling duck, we start discussing dinner, and so might make our way to the Bowery, where the windows filled with rows of Peking duck might sate at least one of the appetites we've worked up. Um,
Mm.
and since we jumped into some French, we might as well jump into some France. The next few poems are going to be some poems that take place in Paris. This one's called 9 a.m. Rue du Prévost. Mangy, a beard's nest of souvenirs from sidewalk staycations. In one hand, vin ordinaire. In the other, a cigarette, ashes hanging crooked. The slight cool Seine scent Parisian breeze greens as it hovers around him. There is what appears to be a holy Bible in his cross-legged lap. Um, and then the next couple of poems are going to be poems that are dedicated to these old, late 19th century jobs in Paris. Um, the ways that people would earn money people who were hired to walk around early in the morning and wake people up by shouting at the windows, throwing things at their windows. This poem called "The Stub Gatherer." Hopefully, you'll see what that is about. And even someone who would just collect the bits of bread and stuff. This one's called "The Stub Gatherer." He strolls, the rare photo showing a he, the belle streets of Belle Epoque Paris, in one hand with a bit of luck, a wispy bit of broom, or short, sharp shepherd's crook. Hovering around the terrasse of Le Procope post-lunch, late night at Les Deux Magots, his eyes darting for the mégots littering the ground, under the chairs and tables of decamped diners and denizens, half or mostly smoked, discarded between the cheese and the cognac, between the seductive whisper and the hurried departure, between courses and seatings, from noon to night. And when a bit of broom or hook proves elusive, a deft, gloved hand serves just as well, collecting the precious stubs and butts whose bits of tobacco escaped the flame and puff of the academic, or the writer, or the mistress, or the painter, or the server. Unsmoked ends by the dozens, collected and collated, split to release the precious brown strands of flammable leaf laid on a block and chopped. A fine new mince mixing the day's finds, scraped and plowed into a new bag, with its scoop and cup, ready to make the rounds in the Jardin de Luxembourg, where the pipe smokers will get the stuff to stuff their pieces, to puff and fume, long before a wily surrealist says, "It ain't so." Um, and then in a heyday of all the cabarets in Montmartre, um, the cabarets, the bars and restaurants would employ their ange gardien to help people. So l'ange gardien. Oh, and it was a beautiful era. The taverns and cabernets of Montmartre and Pigalle, in the reflected moonlight of the Basilica of the Sacred Heart. And how sacred it was that after a night of parting your senses from the wisdom of the ages, angel guardians from the Chat Noir au Lapin Agile, even from, no, especially from the Cabaret Heaven and the Cabaret Hell, might guide you home. You, a casualty of the dead rat. You, a victim of the weapons of the abbess. You, drunk from the fountain of love. You, tilted by the red windmill. Help you wend your way up and down the hill of the martyr. Around the curves and through the alleys of medieval streets, they and their maps protecting you from the vagabonds and ruffians, the prowlers and pickpockets of this unpolished underworld of the Belle Epoque shine. She will, this city of light, surely get you home so that you may again heed the purring summons of the black cat, the chittering beckon of the nimble rabbit, their dizzying spins and high-flying can-can kicks, windmills spinning, decadent shining, until again you fall into the seductive arms or wings of your cabaret's guardian angel. Um, let's see. How about we come back to New York a little bit, but mostly to museums. I write a lot about art, or a lot of ekphrastic poetry. So let's think about some art for a little bit. And I dedicate this one to my mom. She's been very supportive of me as a writer. Both my parents have, um, and so this one is always for her. Sometimes moms don't get it, but they encourage us all the same. After Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Picasso's mama shouted about those awful masks on those pleasurable prostitutes, or the trashy pieces of paper that you just paste in paintings, or during the blue period and rose period, use your palette, Pablo, por favor. Magritte's mère harping on Mademoiselle Fishhead, and the oddity of the window pane painting. Renee, maybe make men with mustaches and mountain fedoras, and make more dark-skied midnights. And they kept on painting. And Shiraz's maman decidedly dithered on his little dots. Georges, with all this color and light, give us dashes and dips and dives in your circuses, dancing dogs and more danseuses doing can-cans and landscapes. You need more landscapes. Dotty people are not enough. And Dali's madre cut to the quick. And don't you dare melt those clocks or set these giraffes on fire. Don't you put those elephants on stilts or tigers and pomegranates. I'll close that woman's drawers and get in here and clean your room. And they kept on painting. Raphael's stepmother, effusive in her excitement. Oh, how I could just pinch the cheeks of your cherubs, so pure and so pink. But really, put some clothes on those muses. They'll catch their death of mud. And at least all those Greeks in that school in Athens look like they're philosophizing and pontificating. Let's keep it that way. And then Kandinsky's mother. Vasily, your geometry text has just vomited all over your canvases. Give me more figures floating in a blue sky. Your expressionism is gobbledygook, abstract gobbledygook. And they kept on painting. And my mother, she who joins me at the museum, ticket and tour guide in hand, just keeps whispering. Can only imagine what you see in these paintings. Um, how about some train poems? Kind of round everything out, I think be a good way to do it. And again, apologies. I hope the dizzying scroll does not drive you crazy. But this was a request, so this is called Being Held Momentarily, famous New York City subway. Being held momentarily. So I'm sitting here on a Brooklyn-bound F, stuck between stations because of an alleged sick passenger whose ailment is probably being sick of train delays and signal problems, which are signaling problems of ailing infrastructure and aging tracks and train traffic and even more delays and switch. But I digress. So here I am sitting, and the seat next to me is empty, the car peopled but not overpopulated, and so I indulge in a bit of manspreading with backpack on bench beside me, and the PA crackles and croaks in a barely audible crow. Sick passenger, station, and then silence until the guy in a seat across the aisle laments 50 years. 50 years of subway delays and failed signal relays and ill voyagers and fed up pigeons and lost cats on tracks. And after what seems a lifetime, but is probably closer to the classic quarter hour, we move into a station to hear loud and clear that this F is rerouted due to construction. So to really get to Brooklyn, I've got to switch to a G running along the F, and the moans and groans follow in unison, as if rehearsed. And you know they are, because they are. And as we crawl into Hoyt Skirmerhorn or Schermerhorn, depending on the announcer announcing the announcement, the train stops and pauses and pauses and pauses and finally opens the doors, discharging passengers like it's choking on commuters. And we pile out and file up the stairs and over and down the stairs and fan out across the platform, flitting in and out of already waiting and impatient passengers for the G that will deliver us closer to home, but not from this fresh hell a century in the neglected making. And as the G pulls into the station, but not right away, because what's a reroute and a sick passenger delay without a wait for the train you really need going your way? The collective tide of travelers crests closer to the yellow band, and I reach out, wishing someone were here to suffer with me.
Mm.
Um, this one's called Soliloquy on the Subway. Dusk. A rushed hour, and I am round as autumn is cool. Humbled by your rail rumble detentions, captured. Earlier, stepping into the AM, I perused posts and times, leafed through the broadsides of scores, scores settled, movies and markets scored. I became inkblood, then knotted rope, noosed, loose, strap hanging from tunnel view, holding on for hindsight. Am I an old running shoe? Hole in my soul, laces frayed, tongue lagging, lost from the right mate? Or am I and Cison Devant, outleaping plie from uncluttered symphonic boy, landing in solid-footed glissade on a frozen pond, winter forcing breath to fog the world. You call me wild. You call for intervention. My days, nights, train after train trickling into terminus, disgorging. Stray, turn around and begin again, and transit again. Rush hour to rush hour, I settle in, empty-bellied beast in the belly of the beast. I think I'll have two more. I think I have enough time for two more. Um, This one's called Marvelous Dynamite Image, as Dave alluded to in the bio. I'm a big comic book fan, so Marvelous Dynamite Image, Volume 3, number 12. Even in the comics, New York skies will stop you dead in your tracks as you move from panel to splash page to panel. Same way they do as you move from block to splashing in the puddle at whatever random intersection. Up there you see the maybe famous sky scratchers, seemingly scraping the undersurface of crowds, the straight and narrow buildings reaching for more, often punctuated by the bosomy protuberance of water towers, or the seductive winks of billboards and LED incantations. The background is broad brushstrokes of early or late day flame tones, or the deep inked blots and bleeds of bruised nights, sometimes starry, sometimes the void between. At your feet, at least in some places, a regular grid that gives way to a jumble of streets and angles as below your feet parallel rails trail uptown and downtown, crossing and crissing expressfully and locally. And whether on the ground cement paths or on under the ground paths of iron, there is boundless cause for hope. Eyeing the two great men celebrating 20 years together, though recognized legally for only about a quarter of that. The two ladies lost in each other more than the city, or the guy with the girl clearly out of his league. But by the sound of her laugh, you can tell she meant it when she said, "Be witty. Making me laugh is the quickest way to win me over." Yes, even on the train, these skies are never far away, covering even the man with no legs, pogoing from one end of the car to the other, one end of the train to the other, donation bucket crooked in his arm when he's not rattling it against the train floor, one dirty, half-gloved hand turned skyward. Um, and for my last poem, there is a sequence of poems that appear throughout the book that are a variation from this headline that I found at a website called hyperallergic.com. And the headline was, "In Malibu, a large hole is being dug to contain your grief." And this is a variation on that. And yet another variation on the theme from a headline, Nocturne. In Malibu, a large hole is being dug to contain your grief. In Paris, a labyrinth is being planted to confuse your dreams. In Dakar, your crashing wave is being frozen against the prison of the Ile de Gorée and the cries lost to history. In Vienna, a piano is being tuned to harmonize with your laughter and your lamentations. In New York, a scaffolding is being skeletoned to shelter pedestrians from your frustrations. In St. Petersburg, halls and galleries and atria are being haunted so that your still lifes are in fact never so. In Seoul, a chorale is being cobbled together for the wildings of your heart. In London, a vast underground network of tunnels deeper than missed connections and second chances is being built to hide from blitzing heartbreaks. In Marrakesh, an eternal Medina is being stoned and mortared to dizzy you with unfamiliar spices. Swaying belly dancers will confound your sense of love and hope. In Buenos Aires, imaginary libraries are being booked and peopled so that you might always be ready to read your ending. In Kyoto, Olympic-sized sake cups are being clayed and fired and lacquered for promises emptied for you. In Rome, the Colosseum is being bathtubed for the washing of your past melancholies. In Toronto, a mahogany bar, mysteriously dark and glass clink quiet, is being stocked so that the barman may serve you lies and libations, liberties, and litanies, and with luck, a listening ear or two. In Texas, multi-lane interstates are being concreted for your sudden, inevitable escape. Green and white signs in El Paso clearly declaring halfway to Malibu. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, David. Wow.
Well
A
done.
brilliant tour de force, not just of Paris and New York, but of language and of literature. I have to quote some of what you read. Firstly, but then I want to really open up the floor to others. But to use, for example, cinnamon as a noun, the way her hair cinnamons between my fingers, the way her skin silk clothes my earlobes, the way her whisper colonizes my very bones. Oh my God. So sensual and so romantic, but in a deep, deep sense. And then you have these glorious playing on the page uh, poems where, for example, in May I Have This Dance, cartographing the locus where one might alight, petal of tulip or honeysuckle, to be nectared, pollen dusted, or simply say, charged and twirled into the field, electric, and more. Anyhow, and your 9 a.m. Rue de Prévost poem where you have just the finest kind of like whisper thin language here, the slight cool Seine scent for Parisian breeze, greens as it hovers, just exquisite. So I'll be quiet. Anyone,
Thank
please,
you.
absolutely unmute your mics and chortle, clap, compliments, comments.
I like that last
Thank you,
poem, the sort of
David.
travelogue.
Oh, oh, thank you.
That
Yeah, I
was
thought
awesome, man.
there were a lot of great poems. I've known David for a little while, and it's been a privilege. I think the not only do you want to hear more poetry from David, but you want to go back and reread or rehear the same poems. They're so dense, they're rich, there's so much in them that you want to see them again. So I encourage people to get the book, and I have the book. It's a great collection of poetry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I really enjoyed your set. Thank you. This is Diane. Thank
Oh,
you
thank
very,
you, Diane.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, David. Just to hear you read it as the editor of the book, I just think it's amazing. And thanks so much. You
Thank
bet.
you.
I wrote all kinds of stuff in the chat and I can't get it to work. But
I
I
do.
mean I just one image after the other was phenomenal. First of all, I love Paris and I felt like I was there. And second
Mm.
of all, I'm a New Yorker and I love New York and I felt like I was there. And just I have here, what is it? Things like, oh, it was a beautiful era. Just these one-liners. Um, I wish I could fed up pigeons. I thought that was hilarious.
Oh,
I feel the city vibes and all of your poetry. That's what I wrote. I have so
thank
many
you.
things. I love this cartographic that was the locus where one might align. It's some clever use of words, I thought. Um, I really thought, well, what was the most seductive? Between the seductive whisper and the hurried departure. I love that.
Right.
I mean, it provoked,
Thank you.
it was provocative, made me think about things. Um, yeah, you're just, I loved all of it. It was wonderful.
That's very kind. Thank you so much.
Wish
Yeah,
I could.
I second that. Well, yeah, it just was wonderful. I was just so impressed with how wonderfully you worked the language. It was your grasp and the stretch and playfulness too. I just really, really enjoyed it. And also your appreciation and real your grasp of art. I was professionally, I was an art critic, and I wrote about art every week, for the daily newspaper in the Midwest, the Columbus Dispatch, and yeah, I really floated with all that and just was entering the space that you were creating. and just such a so thorough and such a grasp, and also just so intuitive and just right there with it all. So I really, really enjoyed your set so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
David,
Thank
from
you.
a once upon lover of rap to a full-fledged poet. Bravo, je te salue, je
Ah,
t'embrasse.
merci. Ah, merci beaucoup, ma chère. Merci, merci.
Very, very proud of you tonight,
Um,
David.
Thank you.
I,
Thank you.
I wanted to give out a shout out to David for I included a brief comment about his help he gave me in my last book in the acknowledgments where I wrote members of critique groups who gave me feedback, especially David Siller at the Poetry Academy of DC. So thank you for your continued feedback, which have helped me.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Wow, wow, wow. Very lush compliments and well deserved, well merited. Just such refined work. I'll stop your recording now, and so that you have all of the commentary included in it. And